Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of the Final Fantasy FXN podcast. I'm your host, David Turner, and I'm joined by co-host Katya.
Hey guys.
And also by Josh.
FXN!
FXN! I haven't done that in a while. Well, anyways, we're going to get started with the podcast, but just before we do, Katya has some news she'd like to share about something new that she started on FXN.
Basically we made a Twitch TV account for live streaming games that we currently play as a community. It's called FXN Live, and we'll try to mostly stream Square Enix games, but we'll also stream games made by other companies that are similar in style to Square Enix games. Like currently, for example, I've been playing Ni no Kuni, and it's a structure that is very similar to Final Fantasies from PlayStation 1 days, and it's gonna be stuff like that.
All right. Josh, have you played Ni no Kuni yet?
I have not, but it looks really interesting. I want to get my hands on it.
You have to, because it's awesome.
Yeah, it's magical.
Oh yeah, and it just gets better as you play it. Like, I would say the first hour or two were a little bit slow.
Yeah.
But oh man, once you get into like the third hour, it's just like,
yeah, the battle system is a bit strange at first, but then it gets really nice.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I'm having a ton of fun with it.
Yeah, same for me. It's been a while.
Yeah, you haven't uploaded or haven't recorded a video lately.
Yeah, I've been a bit busy. Maybe today or tomorrow.
Yes. Okay, so our outline for this episode is we'll start with our news segment, and we'll move on to our questions segment, and then we'll have our feature discussion where we'll be talking about an article that Phoenix wrote about the DLC usage in Final Fantasy games. If you're a first-time listener, the Final Fantasy FXN podcast is a monthly podcast presented by the Final Fantasy FXN Network. You can subscribe to us using the iTunes Store, the Miro podcast directory, YouTube, and of course, finalfantasy-fxn.net. So we'll start things off with our news segment. Our first bit of news is Final Fantasy All the Bravest was announced and released within 2 days. The game was teased about 2 days before it was released on the iOS on the 17th of January. The game features large parties of up to 32, yeah, that's right, you heard me right, 32 people, and the active time battle system is back. Are you guys excited about that, the active time battle system?
I love the ATB.
Oh, I can't wait. And the characters, music, and locations from past FF games are featured throughout the game, so that's a pretty awesome thing. I think everybody's going to like that.
Yeah, you can play as like Edge.
Yeah, and you can track the progress of all your characters, as well as you can check out online leaderboards, and I must say, I think that's a first for any Final Fantasy game.
I'm pretty sure it is.
And finally, there's also 35 premium characters that are available for purchase, which is like awesome.
I know.
So I think based on what we have here, this I think this might be the best Final Fantasy game ever.
It's got a lot of potential.
I think it really does. Well, January 17th came along, and reviewers started reviewing the game, and it's not. It's like the worst game ever. Basically, the gameplay is you swipe your finger as fast as you can across the screen until you either win or you die.
And you will die a lot.
Yes, and you will die a lot. In fact, when you die, you have to wait, 90 seconds per party member for them to get revived.
That sounds like some freemium game.
That'd be okay if you had 4 party members, I suppose, but problem is you have 32 party members, and if I did my math correctly, that means you have to wait about 48 minutes to revive your characters. Yeah. Or this is the best part, or you can spend 99 cents, that's real money, to Square Enix to revive them instantly. That's like the best game mechanic ever.
Yep.
Of course. Amazing.
We have a Spike video game award winner right here.
I think so.
But technically they're using the same structures that any freemium game uses, except instead of, life bar, you have characters.
Mm-hmm. I guess I've never really played any of those types of games.
I did. There are so many of those on iOS. But a lot of them are free, and for this thing you actually have to pay to get in. Which is crazy.
I think the game costs about $3.99.
Yeah, it's something like this should be free, considering how much downloadable content there is.
And don't forget, when you buy a character, it's random.
Exactly. Yeah. When you buy a 99, there are 32 premium characters, 35 premium characters, and each costs 99 cents. But when you buy them, you just get a random character. You don't get to choose which one you
so
get.
If you want one specific character, you might need to buy all of them to possibly get it.
Yeah, so that's a scam.
That's actually, I think that's a great gameplay mechanic. They could go far with that one.
Well, I mean, I suppose really what they're doing is they're just doing something like when you buy Yu-Gi-Oh cards or Pokemon cards, you don't know what you're going to get. It's always got that excitement. Oh, am I going to get the right one?
Yeah, but most people, want to see how the characters from last games like Final Fantasy XIII, Final Fantasy X would look in 2D. Like, why would they pay money to get Final Fantasy I character?
Mm-hmm.
I want to play as a nameless protagonist.
And then I hear some people, they would buy those characters and then they would delete the application and download it again. And if they try to restore the characters, instead of getting what they already had, they get another random character. So maybe you can just do it over and over and over until you get it. I'm not sure if they fixed it.
Also, you can buy different locations, and I don't remember how many there were. But as far as I can tell, they're like $3.99, which is the same cost as the game. So like that's just totally a ripoff.
Yeah, it's disgusting what they're doing right now. Is that?
Yeah.
I've never seen them try to cash in this bad.
Yeah, this has gone way overboard.
I mean, they've done a few applications that, charge a lot for content, but not to this level.
Yeah, and I think if you were to buy absolutely everything in the game, it's something like $54, and that's ignoring the 99 cents that you would have to pay to revive your characters.
Which you'll probably have to do a lot.
You probably will, because I guess there's lots of grinding in the game, and I guess it actually is quite challenging, like, despite just the swiping the finger, like, your characters just physically are not strong enough.
Yeah, you have to, come over every day and do it and level up, I guess.
Yeah, basically, like, IGN came out with a great public service announcement. Basically telling everybody not to buy this game because it's, like, just terrible. And I think they gave it, like, a 2 out of 10.
I think the reviews were horrible.
Yeah, there are not too many positive ones.
There's not much positive to say about it.
I think it's not too bad if you're looking to, like, kill time on a trip. But other than that, there's really no purpose to it.
Yeah, maybe if you, play 5 minutes a day, it could be okay.
And then if you actually did wait the time to revive your characters. But anyways, we'll be talking more about DLC in our feature discussion. So we'll move on to our next news topic, and that was the extended version of the Lightning Returns Jump Festa trailer. Square Enix released an extended version of the Jump Festa trailer featuring, 5 or 10 seconds extra. And I think the main difference was that there was a scene where Noel and Lightning have a little one-on-one battle with one another. But as far as I could tell, that was the only change. Did you guys notice anything else that was different?
Not really. Even Noel had the same costume.
Yeah, he did. So.
I think they might have extended the battle a little bit, like the gameplay show off.
Maybe they did. And I think there was also something at the very beginning where it just said, like, there are only 13 days left or something like that. But
so nothing really significant.
Yeah, that was the only thing I could tell. But one thing I did notice was that it seemed to have the same frame rate problems as in the first trailer. So I'm almost starting to wonder, maybe those actually are legitimate gameplay frame rate problems. Like I had originally thought that they were just like encoding issues with the video, but now that's happened twice in a row.
That's a possibility because they had so much time to fix it, and either they don't care or it's a real problem.
Yeah, so that's slightly worrying, but again, it's early and they might still be just optimizing things a little bit.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's going to get better.
Yeah, but other than that, it was nothing too exciting about that. They came out with both the English and Japanese version, just like before. Maybe we'll just talk about Noel for a bit. What did you guys think of Noel?
I like that he's back, but I don't like that he looks exactly the same.
I think they added like a strand of gray hair. But his hair changed, but he can change his outfit, and it's like hundreds of years that he lived. And I can't say anything good about it.
One good thing about Noel is the awesome voice actor.
Max from Max and Goofy.
What?
He voiced Max in the old Goofy stuff.
Max?
Really?
Is that the dog?
Goofy's son.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The dog is Pluto, that's right. Well, he also did, what's his name from Spirited Away?
Oh, yeah, that movie.
That awesome movie.
I've seen it too many times.
Oh, yeah?
It used to come on Toonami like every weekend, and I'd watch it, so I just kind of don't really remember anything about it. I've seen it so much.
It's been really good.
Not too long ago. Have you ever seen it, Katya?
I've seen it like back when it came out, but I never dared to try it again.
Okay. Anyways, we'll move on to our next news topic, and it's Motomu Toriyama considers Lightning to be the Final Fantasy's first female protagonist. Wow. Maybe Toriyama has never played Final Fantasy VI or Final Fantasy X-2. I'm not
Yeah,
really
considering
sure.
he made it.
He directed 10-2.
Well, maybe he directed it, but maybe he never played it. Maybe he was just commanding all of the developers. Okay, do this, do whatever you guys want. I'm not a real director.
Maybe he was on drugs or something during the
I don't
development.
think he plays games.
To his credit, when Final Fantasy VI, the game is done in such a way that there is no true main character. It's kind of like everybody's equally important. But a lot of people do consider Terra to be the main character, and I somewhat agree with that.
Yeah, she was a poster girl. She was in the logo.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people see it that way.
Yeah, but in my opinion, 10-2, that's like, I just don't get it.
Because technically, Final Fantasy XIII also didn't have the main character then. And everybody was supposed to be, big part of the
Group
story.
thing.
I mean, at least that's how they shipped it back when 13 was developed.
No, I felt Lightning was the main character. I couldn't explain why, but
I mean, she was, but I remember them saying something like, everybody's important. And you know how the things ended it.
Yeah.
So there were some other characters that were also important. When wasn't here.
I could see Fang being actually a fairly important character, but I mean, you don't get her until
Chapter 9, I think.
10, 15 hours into the game, maybe even?
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
I mean, Vanille did all, like, the narration stuff, too.
Yeah.
So...
No, that is actually a good point. Vanille was fairly important. Although I hated Vanille. Ugh.
Because a lot of people say it's actually Fang and Vanille who are the main characters.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It's like they're the main characters. It's almost like they're the reason why the story is happening.
Yeah.
But Lightning is the one kind of directing the way that they're going to be moving. Anyways, enough of that anger. Or frustration or whatever you want to call it.
How dare you forget about Yuna?
Well, yeah... Even in Final Fantasy X, I mean, I know Titus was the main character, but Yuna was almost as important.
I'd say they were equally important.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, Titus was like Vaughn, but not quite as annoying.
He wasn't even real.
Oh, spoiler!
But technically he officially was the main character, so I get that. I mean, unless maybe he doesn't see 10-2 as, as part of the main series, maybe.
Yeah, that might be what he's talking about.
Maybe.
But considering he's making all these sequels, and like, because Final Fantasy Lightning Returns is all about lightning.
I mean, technically Lightning Returns is not even main Final Fantasy title either, so.
Yeah, so I don't know what he's talking about.
He's just too obsessed with her.
Yeah. Or he's just trying to hype up the game so people think, oh, yeah, this is really cool. Like, I've never, like, this is something totally new. I'm going to buy this game now. Yeah. Anyways, we'll move on. So there's some new Lightning Returns information from Famitsu. There's this new character, Lumina, which has sparked quite a bit of discussion about possible lightning and hope scenarios, but...
Please don't fuel the fan fiction. Please don't.
I feel like I'm being blamed.
I never even realized it, but based on some of the screenshots, I can't help but agree. But anyways,
I think it would be funny. But
anyways, Lumina is designed by Toshiyuki Itahana, who designed the DLC costumes in Final Fantasy XIII-2. Also, the scene in the extended jump trailer with Noel and Lightning fighting each other has to do with Lightning freeing Noel's soul. Wow.
Sounds creepy.
And
I think I know what that means in terms of the story, but I don't know if I can spoil that.
You better not.
Yeah, I don't think I should.
It's too early.
Yeah, because it also has to do with the ending of the last game.
Yeah. And also, another thing that was mentioned is that the active time battle system is the busiest it's ever been. And I think that has to do with one of the later points here where it mentions when you press a button, the command is immediately invoked. And for me, this is a huge relief since I had previously written an article about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the Final Fantasy XIII Lightning Returns trailer. And one of the things I'd mentioned was that the battle system didn't look that impressive to me because it seemed like you press a button and you'd have to wait a few seconds just like you would in Final Fantasy XIII.
I just hope it's not going to be too busy because, for example, in Final Fantasy XIII, like they also tried to make it very busy and at times it felt like you don't really have time to select what you want to select, so it's easier to just pick after battle and forget
auto
about
battle,
it.
Yeah.
Like most
I don't think, as far as I can tell, there is no auto battle in Lightning Returns.
I hope not.
Yeah.
It didn't look that way.
Yeah, it didn't look that way. It looked like you actually have to press the buttons and select your commands, so I kind of like that.
Yeah, so maybe if commands are immediate, it's going to be easier to control.
Yeah.
Force characters to actually use strategy in battle.
Yeah, and I rewatched the trailers and I noticed that you can see the actual like commands being selected, and nearly instantaneously you see lightning attack. The only times that might not be the case if you're far away from the enemy and you have to run up to them first, then you might have to wait a few seconds, but that's kind of expected anyways. But yeah, that's a big relief to me because that was one of the things I was concerned about, so that's a really nice thing to hear. And players can also perform style changes in Instant. So that's, well, I guess they were pretty fast in 13 once you've done them like the first time.
But the first changing animation took forever because it had to give us close up on every character, and then changing, and then the next character. Yeah,
so that was a little bit annoying, but I'd imagine it's going to be as fast as the second time, which is near instantaneous.
Well, in 13.2 it was totally instantaneous, so they'll probably just go with that.
Maybe they'll have options to either see full animation or short version.
Maybe.
Yeah, like they did in Final Fantasy X with the summons.
Yeah.
And 9? Did they do that with the 9?
Yeah, you could shorten summon animations.
Yeah, that'd be a nice thing to have. Because some people might like to see, ooh, look at the animations. Cool effects.
Sure wish 7 had a shortening summoning animation.
For which one?
Knights of the Round?
Knights of the Round, yeah.
That was too long.
I always enjoyed watching that one.
I enjoyed watching it the first 5 times. But when you're fighting Emerald and Ruby Weapon, there's just
when
a
you're
point.
Fighting Emerald and you have to mime Knights of the Round like 10, 20 times.
And have it like connected to your HP absorbed materia so you don't die.
Yeah. Oh man, those materia combinations.
Phoenix Final Attack.
A Phoenix Final Attack, one of the best things ever. Well, another thing here is you can use the ATB in the field more, which is... do you guys understand how that's going to work?
Nope.
I don't get that.
In the field.
Yeah, that's... Maybe they're trying to add some Final Fantasy XII kind of stuff in there where there's some battle stuff outside of the actual battle.
Maybe it could be something environmental, for example.
Yeah.
You need to freeze the lava or...
Yeah, like in Ni no Kuni.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
Oops.
We're in Final Fantasy IX when you can melt the ice cavern and get a chest with
MP. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, maybe there'll be something like that.
I think that actually costed MP, too.
Oh, did it?
I think so.
Huh.
Because you had to use it more than just the one time.
Yeah, you did.
So
I never even noticed.
Well, I think the 6 MP really mattered.
Yeah, so maybe that's what they mean. Like, if you actually do, maybe, like, you can do some stuff outside of battle, and it does actually cost you magic points or whatever. And maybe you can change styles outside of battle as well, and it changes the effect of certain things. That might actually be really cool.
Maybe.
They could make some good puzzles out of it.
Yeah, they could. And also it says you can use the ATB in the field more and dash less. I don't understand what the dashing is all about. Is that like dodging enemies?
Maybe.
Because I know 13.2 had that where enemies would appear and you had to like run.
Maybe like a fast jump to the side.
Yeah. I don't know. There might be something lost in translation there.
Quite possibly.
There's an action to slide down sand dunes as well. So we know that there's going to be a desert area now.
Well, when they released that first picture of the island or whatever, it looked like there was a pretty sizable chunk of desert.
Ah, that's true. And that might have something to do with the ATB. Like, maybe they're considering things like quick time events as part of the ATB.
Could be.
And in the demonstration shown to Famitsu, Lightning was shown wearing a violet dress, rapier sword, and rose-patterned shield. I couldn't figure out what style that might be, but maybe it was just custom. I don't recall one that looked like that, though.
I don't think we've seen it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. What's funny, most of your costumes so far look green or beige or, earthy color.
Wasn't there a camo one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was
a
a
mix
white
of
one.
all the colors.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the news that we're going to be talking about for this episode. There was actually quite literally like a ton of news this month and
screenshots. More screenshots.
Lots of screenshots and some rumors about trademark registrations for new games. So we couldn't possibly talk about it all on the podcast. So if you want to check out all the other stories, go to finalfantasy-fxn.net and check them out. We're we're going to move on to our questions segment now, and I think this is the first time that we've had 4 questions.
Dun, dun, dun.
So that's quite nice to see. And so our first question here is by Crazy Knives, and she asks, who would win in a fight, Fang or Lightning? Now, this is a really tough question, and it depends on what time frame you're talking about, I'd say. Because I think in Final Fantasy XIII, the original game, I think Fang would destroy Lightning.
Summon Bahamut and win?
I think it would be a draw.
Not even that, but like if you just considered the 2 characters, I think Fang would win because it seemed that by the time you're maxed out your characters, for me at least, Fang was more powerful than Lightning. Like her physical attack would do 50% more damage than Lightning. And I think she had more health too, if I'm not mistaken, at least for my character.
Lightning had really low health for a protagonist.
But if you're to consider like Lightning's god mode,
yeah, Fang won't have a chance then.
Yeah, Fang wouldn't stand a chance. But if you're just considering their basic characters, I would probably side with Fang. Katya, what would you say?
I mean, I agree with you. During Final Fantasy XIII, probably would be Fang. Or at least, they would be more on the equal side.
Yeah.
But if, during 13-2 and later, Lightning is supposed to be a goddess, so she's supposed to defeat everybody, I guess.
Yeah. And Josh, what would you say?
Pretty much the same thing.
Oh, yeah. So it's consensus. We all agree.
Indeed.
Now, this is a fairly controversial question, asked by Katya, in fact. Katase made a statement not too long ago where he said, "We made a decision that we were going to have a sole protagonist in the 3rd installment of the Final Fantasy XIII franchise since the very beginning, 60 years ago, possibly 2005 or 2006, something like that." And Katya asks, do you think that this is a blatant lie just to get the fans to accept the trilogy and protect Toriyama, who is his protege, or is he being honest? Now, Katya, you'll get the first chance to respond.
Oh, it's a bit weird me answering it because, my answer is clear. I think he's lying.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to protect the series, I guess, and he wants to protect Toriyama because since he's his student, he's a reflection of him. He wants his projects to do well, but, this is too obvious.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I could see them starting to think about a trilogy when they announced it for the 360, because I think by then they really wanted to expand things and try to make as much money as possible from Final Fantasy XIII. Like maybe the development costs were really high. So at that point, they might have started planning at least a sequel. Maybe not quite a trilogy yet, but at least a sequel.
Yeah, they definitely had it in their mind, but by then, but not when they just started 13.
Yeah, exactly. When the game was first announced in, what was it, 2005? Or was it 2006?
2006 in May.
Yeah, so they must have started working on it in about 2005. And then it was announced in 2006. And then was it 2 years later? Or was it a year later that it was announced for 360?
I think that was in 2008.
Yeah.
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, so it must have been 2008 it was announced for 360. So I could believe at that point they started thinking about the trilogy.
But I don't even think they even started then because the ending for 13 didn't leave room for a sequel. So I think they started thinking about it when they announced 13-2.
No, that's possible.
And even then, maybe not right away. Because when they announced it, they just barely started making it.
Josh, what do you think?
I think Toriyama wanted to make a trilogy, but they probably didn't really get started thinking about that as a whole until 13-2 started development.
So you think Toriyama always had it as a possibility, we could make a trilogy, but we're not going to start working on it, or we're not even going to really think about it until after?
Yeah, because Toriyama's just that kind of guy.
I think his mind is just all over the place. He promises things and then he doesn't deliver, or he does something completely different, like how he promised that Lightning is going to be happy at the end of 13. So I don't think he even knew what it's going to be by then.
I think Toriyama's mind is a paradox.
Yeah, that's the answer.
That's a good one. All right, our next question is by Final Fantasy Nut, and he asks, why do you think Final Fantasy fans are always so negative about the series? Is it because they have Final Fantasy VII or 8 nostalgia and nothing will live up to that standard? Well, Josh, we'll start with you on this one.
I think so, because a lot of people consider their first Final Fantasy their favorite, and they think it's the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when newer games come out, they automatically compare it to their favorite, and if it doesn't meet it, they automatically put it down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of been that way for a while, so it's pretty plausible.
And Katya, what would you say?
I think nostalgia plays a part, but that's not everything. I think if the games would be still good right now, I don't think there would be so much backlash.
Yeah, and for me, I also agree with the nostalgia bit. That absolutely plays a part with liking the newer games, because as Josh said, you're automatically going to be comparing it to your first Final Fantasy.
Because fans don't come just to be negative. They would love to say positive things, but they wouldn't say for something that they don't enjoy.
And I enjoyed Final Fantasy XII, and I think that's the direction they should have continued going with. Because I really like the way they did the battle system, and also the way that they did the entire world. It was a really good compromise between the old ways of having linear areas plus overworld, and in Final Fantasy XII it was like all overworld, but it wasn't actually overworld. It was just like totally non-linear, and I really think that's the direction they should have gone with just a few refinements to the battle system.
Yeah, I agree with you. Design-wise, it would be great. Because, I don't really care about medieval themes, but how the areas were designed, how everything was connected, it was great. But I guess it's too much work to make for HD consoles.
That's possible. They did say if we were to remake Final Fantasy VII, it would take 20 years.
Yeah, and it's even not as expensive as Final Fantasy XII.
Yeah. So, it's not just that all modern Final Fantasy games, they're terrible. I think I liked Final Fantasy XII, and I would consider that a more modern Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy XIII, for me, could have been a lot better. So, oh, and also I enjoyed Crisis Core. That was a modern one.
Handheld, that was good.
And Type 0, I think just about any Final Fantasy fan would agree that Type 0
it at least looks good.
If you talk about Type 0, I personally played it and I thought it was great. So if it would be released here, I think a lot of people would come and give positive feedback.
Yeah, so
the Vita's not selling.
Unfortunately.
I might be getting one soon, so that could be a thing.
You want
my birthday's coming. I asked for it for my birthday, so we'll see.
There you go. I'll probably get one this year, in fact, but I don't quite know when, but we'll see.
Same.
But anyways, just to sum up that question, I think it's not just that, new games, it's going to suck because it's different than the one I played first. I think we're legitimately looking at the good and the bad of the new games, and sometimes the bad outweighs the good.
Yeah, and I don't think it really matters when you played it, because before I played Final Fantasy XIII, the last one I played was Final Fantasy VI, and it became my most favorite game out of the series. And it was after I played all the older games. So I don't think it matters as much. It's more about the quality of the game.
Yeah. Our last question is by Lyro1000. I said it correctly this time. With every new piece of news, it seems that Lightning Returns is straying further from the rest of the Final Fantasy series. Do you think in their efforts to make it appeal more to Western gamers that they will alienate the Japanese fan base? Josh, what about you?
I think it will end up alienating the Japanese fan base to some extent, but there are still millions of people that get the day off when a Final Fantasy game comes out just so they could go home and play it. So I don't think it's going to matter in terms of sales-wise, because I think we already kind of came to the consensus that it's not going to sell that well anyway.
Yeah, Final Fantasy XIII 2 sold way less than 13 did.
Yeah.
And I think, do you guys remember what the Japanese region sales were like? They weren't overly impressive, I don't think.
No.
For 13.2?
Yeah, 13.2.
It was 500k first week or so.
Was it that many?
I think so.
Okay.
Somewhere around that
more
number.
than I thought. And
so,
yeah.
I don't think it'll alienate them going forward, because hopefully this is the last of the Lightning saga. We can hope. So with how Final Fantasy is always changing, I don't think it's going to alienate the fan base forever.
I think Square Enix already has kind of alienated their fan base a little bit, in particular the Japanese fans, because I believe when 13.2 was announced, there were a lot of Japanese forums which were very upset about some of the things that they were doing. And now that they're just keeping on making more changes with Lightning Returns, I think it really is starting to alienate them. And as I'm playing through Ni no Kuni, I keep on seeing things that, this is totally the quality of a Final Fantasy game. It seems different because they're doing things very different ways, but in terms of the quality of the game, I really wish it was a direction that Final Fantasy went with.
And it's made by smaller studios than Square Enix.
Yeah, and they're doing things that Square Enix claims is impossible, like overworld, airships, and stuff like that. Towns, shops, although I suppose they're going to have shops in Lightning Returns. But yeah, it's just, I would like to see more effort with Square Enix. And honestly, I'd rather see simpler graphics like they do with Ni no Kuni, which, to be honest, look beautiful. Mm-hmm. But they are simple, because it's just cel-shaded.
Yeah.
And the characters themselves, like they almost look like they could be like Final Fantasy IX-ish, and then just that would allow them to do things like overworld maps. So that's something I'd love to see return, maybe in Final Fantasy 15, if it's not Versus 13. And Katya, what do you think?
Well, I think they're straying away from what Final Fantasy is, but I don't think they exactly changing it completely from Japanese to Western. It still looks Japanese to me, although it has some Western influences. I think they're just trying to change it so they spend less money on making it, like having one character, so they don't have to make animations for new characters, things like that.
Yeah, I suppose I never even thought about that, because having just one character, that would probably cost less to make.
Yeah.
A lot less, I bet.
They don't need to make new characters, they don't need to animate them, they don't need to make new outfits, and just reuse old stuff as much as possible.
And possibly less voicing.
Definitely.
Don't need to record an hour of grunting for the battles.
Yeah, that's right. So that's all of our questions for this episode. If you have any questions you'd like to ask us, you can go to the FinalFantasy-FXN.net forums and ask in the questions thread. Now it's time for our feature discussion. In this episode, we're going to be talking about changing with the times, how DLC has affected Final Fantasy. Now, Phoenix wrote this article shortly after Final Fantasy All the Bravest was released, and after it started getting the terrible reviews. And Phoenix discusses the use of DLC in Final Fantasy XIII-2, as well as their use of it with some of their more recent mobile games. Now, publishers need to make money somehow with games nowadays, and as the cost of development increases, sales from the games just aren't good enough anymore. And so my question is DLC the answer to this problem? What do you guys think?
I think it is the answer, but it doesn't mean it's a good one.
There's the problem.
Yeah,
definitely I would say DLC has been a huge presence this generation, and I think most publishers have accepted it as the way that they're going to be making the most money from their games. And I think most people would agree that there are good types of DLC.
I mean, there could be good types, but I don't think Square Enix really knows how to make it that way, because, I mean, if you think about back in Final Fantasy XIII, they promised downloadable content like a dungeon, and they couldn't make it, and they cancelled it. And then they tried to do the same thing for 13 too, and again they couldn't make it, and they cancelled it, and all we got are costumes that are very expensive. And then when you think about
meaningless episodes.
Yeah. When you think about it, the game itself costs $60 when it comes out, and then it's a game full of content, and then you have to pay like $6 for a costume or.
Is it that much, really?
No, I think it was less.
I think
like
each costume was $1.99.
Okay.
It was more than $1.99, I think.
I know they had them on sale for a little while, I think.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
I think some were like $2.99, some were more expensive, some were less.
Remember the MOG ones costed a bit because you got like 17 costumes or something ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. But then one costume is not for that price. It's not comparable for how much content you get in the whole game that costs $60.
Well, I think Katya, you bring up a good point about it costing $60, because in the thread I mentioned that if the game maybe costed $50 or $40, and going into it expecting, I'm probably gonna pay about $20 or $30 extra because of the DLC. I think people might be a lot more accepting of DLC in that sense, because then they'll go into it thinking I'm saving $20 and I can use that $20 on DLC.
Well, how about just having a whole package together for $20 extra?
$80?
Yeah.
That probably wouldn't go over too well, because the problem with that is then fewer people would buy the game. But if the game only costed $40...
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. If it's $40 and then $20 is $60, so it would be the same as it costs now. But it wouldn't do it.
because more people will probably buy the game. The sales would probably be higher. The numbers, physical copies sold would probably be higher. And even though not everybody will buy DLC, I bet most people would buy at least one thing. And that might be enough to subsidize the lower cost of the game. I don't know anything about business, so But that's how I feel. Like if a fan knows that there's going to be DLC, they might appreciate the cost of the game being lower. But then Fox responded to that, and he had a good point about that would be fine if the DLC was just like not crucial to the story, but when the DLC actually contains an ending to the story, or it's like you can't finish the game without buying more DLC. It just doesn't matter what the cost of the price of the game. That's just wrong. And I guess I agree with that.
I agree with it too. But also how that ending is presented, because like Lightning episode was just one battle and that's it, and a CG ending.
And for $5 you get
That was
nothing.
bad.
Yeah.
Because the same thing happened, if you remember Prince of Persia 2008, they had the $10 episode, but it was an actual episode with content, like you can play and jump through some places, and you get a real ending. Like that kind of thing would worth more to me than one battle in CG.
Even though it costed more?
It cost a bit more, but it was actual content that you play.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there are some companies that have managed to do DLC pretty well. BioWare with Mass Effect and Gearbox with Borderlands 2, where like with the stuff they're putting out isn't crucial, but it's fun extra content that you can download for, I don't know, in Borderlands case it's $10 for an expansion, and you get a lot more content that isn't necessary at all, but it's fun to play. So I think things like that are good.
Yeah.
But DLC, just basically to unlock an ending, is pretty bad.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, they're unlockables, and back in the day, unlockables you used to get on the disc, and you didn't have to pay extra. And nowadays, like, unlockables, and a lot of the time, they don't exist anymore. And now, the unlockables you have to pay for, which is
It cheapens the experience. Like, before you could strive for something and find something that you didn't know about, and now you just pay up and don't bother finding it.
I love the way Uncharted did it. Like, especially the first Uncharted, because there were a ton of things you could unlock, and there was absolutely no DLC for that game. Like, there are different rendering modes you could unlock, and different costumes, and even different character models that you could unlock. Like, they had a Crash Bandicoot kind of one. That was awesome. And, yeah, I can't remember if Uncharted 2, I know it had some, but maybe not quite as many.
I think it also had unlockables.
Yeah, I think it did. A lot of similar ones.
Yeah.
As the first one. But they also introduced the DLC at that point. But that's pretty standard with shooter type games, or like extra maps for online. And honestly, that's totally fine with me as long as it's priced accordingly.
And extra maps for online is fine, because online is basically an extra experience for that game.
Exactly. And if you don't want to buy it, you don't have to. It's totally
not as important for the main part of the game.
And one of the great things about Uncharted is that not only did they come up with some pay DLC, but they also came up with a lot of free stuff too. Like they had some of the older maps from the first game revived, and I think you get 2 maps for free at that point. And they also had some special events where like you wear Christmas costumes for free and Halloween ones.
And I remember before PS3 came out, and the current gen, it was a promise with downloadable content that you can get some free stuff and you're gonna get some paid stuff. But it feels like most of what we get is paid stuff, and anything free is like hardly matters.
Yeah. Well, Fox came out with a comment, and I think it was pretty similar to what you said, Josh, but I'll just say it anyways. DLC for an FF game is not something I object to in principle, but there are certain DLC practices I can't stand. Take something like Mass Effect, a series that by and large does DLC pretty well. What happens is BioWare gives you the full game, all the story, everything you need. They will then release additional content, things like Lair of the Shadow Broker and Mass Effect 2, where you get to fight with Liara again, or Leviathan in Mass Effect 3, where you get to see where the Reapers came from. This is all interesting, meaningful story stuff. It is not, however, crucial, and it certainly does not add important content to the conclusion of the game. What once may have been a secret ending reserved for accomplishing something in-game is now included as DLC, which is bad. And, I fully agree, because DLC should be extra stuff. It shouldn't be mandatory to get what should have been on the game.
Right.
And if we go back in time, well, I guess they still do this, but for the most part, back in the day, publishers and developers came up with expansion packs for games, and it happened a lot with like RTS games and maybe shooters. I don't know. I suppose that was the DLC of the day back when you mostly still bought your computer games in the store.
Yeah.
And I don't seem to remember anyone complaining about those, and it's probably because they're always quite a significant package. Like, I found it usually contained at least half the amount of the original content in the game. Like, you'd get a fairly decent campaign out of it and a bunch of extra units and stuff like that.
Yeah, but back then, they couldn't distribute it easily. People actually had to go to the store and buy it. So they had to, make it be good and entertaining.
It had to be worth it.
Otherwise, who would bother?
Exactly. And I think that's something they should try to go back to, even with... now you can just you can pay the micro charges that you do for extra content like new costumes, but it might be better if they just bundled it all together all at once, and it might be like a discounted price for buying all of it, like instead of buying one single costume for $2.
That would be good to see, but I don't see that many companies do that.
I know.
You usually only see that in like Game of the Year editions where they tack on all the DLC.
Sometimes it feels easier to just wait for those.
But like I'd rather pay like $20 for a large expansion rather than
like some of them do
buy them all little bits.
Some of
them do.
No, some of the companies do season passes.
Yeah.
So you get all the downloadable content and extra episodes and that kind of stuff.
It's usually at a reduced rate than if you buy everything individually as well.
Yeah, that's something I'd like to see more of, and less of the micro charges, which can sometimes get a little bit annoying. Well, I don't think there's anything else to discuss.
Not really. Kind of hit the nail on the head.
Well, I think that finishes up our discussion about the DLC. If you want to check out that article, you can go to the website for that. I think it's like 2 pages back or maybe even 3 pages. It was quite a while ago. I think it was mid-January that was put up, so you can just look around that time. And so if you're a first-time listener to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes Store, Miro Podcast Directory, YouTube on our Final Fantasy FXN channel, and of course you can find us on finalfantasy-fxn.net. Our next episode will be released in the second week of March, and I guess that's the end. So I guess we'll say goodbye to everybody.
See you next month, guys.
Adios, egos.
Yeah, see you guys later for next time. Okay, and just maybe say a few things in your mic just to see how high the thing's going.
Howdy. I think I'm being picked up pretty well.
It seems like it's recording fine for me.
Okay, that should be good. And Josh, what's it going up for you?
It looks pretty good to me. I just have to actually remember to talk into the microphone this time.
Oh, yes.
Because a couple times I was making comments in the last podcast and I was kind of drinking my coffee and...
Oh, yeah. I was doing that a little bit last time, too. I was a little bit too far away from the mic. I'm going to have to stay closer.
Yeah.
Because I added a little accessory onto my microphone.
Did you get a filter?
Yeah, a pop filter.
Yeah.
My mom made it.
Nice. Hello?
Hi.
David, what do you think?
You guys just stopped.
I'm getting distracted.
Oh.
Jesus, you're talking
Jesus.
too much.
Jesus, stop talking.
It keeps going.
He probably doesn't even realize that.
Few walls one more time.
Yeah.
It kind of
and
kills it.
I'm sorry.
You okay?
That was really loud.
I might have died a little bit.
Our next episode released in the second week of March. I'll just say that again.